And now it's time for us to discuss more of these headlines and simple keywords with Adam joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Lena, and happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. Happy Friday Eve to you.
Happy Friday Eve to you as well. Still going with that.
I'm trying. All right, let's jump into our keyword news portion of the day. We're going to try to clarify these major headlines for our listeners, and this is our first pick of the day.
Digital order.
So President Yoon has proposed the creation of an international body that will be tasked with establishing regulations for digital order as the world becomes even more connected, that is, and more reliant on tech that we fail to completely understand at this moment.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of these tech go straight over my head as well. And there's been some grounds for confusion when we speak of technology in the global sphere. But there have been some very fast developments when it comes to technology, and I think President Yoon is trying to address that concern in order to try and make an international kind of guideline, if you will, in terms of these ever fast-growing technologies. Now, Yoon made the remark on Wednesday when he attended the Paris Digital Vision Forum at Sorbonne University in Paris. He said it would be desirable for related efforts to be led by the UN in a bid to secure international consensus. And he proposed the idea, which he dubbed the Paris Initiative, stressing the significant role of digital technology, specifically data and AI, in addressing long-standing unresolved issues. But he noted that at the same time, it is causing enormous confusion regarding the source of its originality and statutory rights as well. A lot of these technologies, there's been a lot of disputes over who created them and who came up with it first. And he also stressed that technology has also led to real dangers demonstrated in the climate crisis, as well as deepening polarization, loss of humanity, in his words, and also weapons of mass destruction as well. And he noted that these issues should not be left alone. Yoon said a number of countries, including South Korea, are preparing a digital bill of rights. Now, the US has announced a blueprint for the AI Bill of Rights, and the EU Parliament recently passed an AI regulatory bill as well. And Yoon especially stressed the need for an appropriate level of regulations in developing and using digital technology. And he added that regulatory violations should be deemed illegal actions, punishable by strong sanctions. But of course, there are a lot of gray areas in that regard. And so President Yoon is trying to propose that those gray areas be resolved.
That's right. I mean, it's been said even by the movers and shakers in the tech sector that perhaps we need to halt the development of AI, which is happening at lightning speed, and ensure that there are guidelines and laws that the international community would need to abide by. In the hands of the wrong person, I think that's the question we keep asking when it comes to the lightning fast development of tech.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right. So Yoon was also speaking with the Vietnam News Agency out of a state visit to Hanoi. What did he have to say in that interview?
Yeah, so he voiced hope for stronger security cooperation, especially with Vietnam. And he said that through this rule-based order will be able to take firm roots in the Indo-Pacific region. And he also said Korea will continue to cooperate with Vietnam in maritime security as well. And Yoon said the two nations have built an exemplary, mutually beneficial partnership on all fronts. And he said it was time to develop a more qualitative, future-oriented relationship. And he expressed hope that cooperation in the defense industry will be further expanded when he makes that trip on Thursday, local time. And he also stressed the need to expand their cooperation beyond the manufacturing sector to cover fields such as finance, IT, culture, and service sectors. The news agency said Yoon plans to announce a new grant aid project as well, meant to bolster Vietnam's science and technology capabilities.
All right, with that, we move on to our second keyword of the day.
Education reform.
So high schools in Korea will adopt a credit system from 2025 as initially planned. This would allow students to choose subjects they want according to their career paths, aptitudes, interests, and so on forward. So you can design your own schedule, if you will. You just have to finish a certain amount of credits. So tell us the details.
Right, so the Education Ministry revealed the plan when it announced a set of measures to improve the competitiveness of public education. It will be implemented when the current middle school second graders enter into high school. Now, the move expands courses that students can enroll in as long as they earn enough credits to graduate. So basically, a system that's similar to what universities adopt in Korea and I believe in the US as well.
And
Now,
honestly, for my American education system, it was definitely about this. You start early.
yeah.
In fact, middle school, you start designing your own course load, but there are required courses and then there are
Yeah.
electives. Was it similar for you?
Yes, it's similar in the UK as well. So
Mm.
basically, well, the UK doesn't have middle or high school separately, but basically, the academic years before university, the subjects and the number of subjects are kind of streamlined
Mm.
into a more kind of focused area. So yeah, it is a bit similar, but yeah, there is a mix of mandatory and elective subjects as well. Now, this whole system is basically placing a heavy emphasis on student choice, basically, and it
Mm.
aims to resolve chronic educational problems due to the kind of standardized curriculum. And it also calls for adjusting class hours according to the purpose of the credit system as well. So basically, you don't have to attend school for the whole day, maybe. I mean, you get some
Maybe.
breaks in between. Maybe you get some breaks in between. But of course, that is up to the choice of the student. If they want to have their timetable filled in completely, then that's completely up to them as well. But I doubt that many students will opt for that option. Now, the ministry, however, did decide to keep the relative grading system for subjects in the first year of high school. And the ministry said it decided not to introduce an absolute method for grading first year students in a bid to secure credibility and fairness in evaluating a student's performance. Now, in the case of elective subjects, only the achievement evaluation system will be used. And also, meanwhile, the ministry plans to increase the number of public online schools from the current 4 to 17 by the
Mm.
year 2025 as well. So basically, on the whole, it seems that the Education Ministry and President Yoon wants to basically adopt kind of a sort of a Western style education
Mm.
system when it
Mm.
comes to high school education and more in line with university systems as well.
All in, it seems a clear effort to tackle the heated private education sector so that students can perhaps rely more on public school or just school curriculums and still manage to get into college of their choice.
Yes, which is still quite hard, I must say.
But we must still work to reform the current education sector. And there you have it. We'll probably continuously dabble with the topic. This is only the beginning. Let's move on to our third keyword of the day.
Punishing stalkers.
So there had been calls to strengthen laws against stalking crimes, and lawmakers have passed a revised bill that punishes stalkers regardless of whether the victim has given their consent to do so.
That's right. So the bill was interestingly unanimously passed by the National Assembly. So it certainly goes to show the weight of the issue at hand and the increased public calls for such a system to be adopted. And the lawmakers have answered those calls. Now, it was drafted after the system's kind of shortcomings surfaced, especially in the wake of the stalking murder case that occurred at Shindang Station last year. That's when a victim was stabbed to death in the station's bathroom by the perpetrator, who was to be sentenced the following day for stalking her. Now, crime analysts said at the time that stalkers were taking advantage of the consent loophole by threatening victims to withdraw their complaints. Now, the revision was also one of Yoon's campaign pledges as well. Now, Wednesday's revision will also allow courts, if they judge it necessary, to protect victims during hearings, to require stalkers to wear electronic anklets even before conviction. Perpetrators who remove or damage the devices will face imprisonment of up to 3 years or a fine of up to 30 million Korean won. Now, the revision also classifies acts of recklessly sending texts, photos, or video files through electronic devices as stalking as well. So it's not just physically stalking the victims. Now, providing the personal information or location of victims to third parties or stealing such information to impersonate them online will be criminalized as well. So certainly a toughening of those punishments and a crackdown on stalking.
And expanding the definition of what constitutes stalking too. In this very digital age, it seems that there are more than one way to make someone feel absolutely uncomfortable in their own home. All right. Let's move on to take a look at export numbers. This is our fourth keyword of the day.
Exports up.
So will export numbers bounce back in Q3? That's the big question. It seems that there is some light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to exports. How strong that light is a question that can be deciphered from many angles. But I mean, there are some estimations indicating that they could start to pick up again in the third quarter. So what's the outlook?
Yeah, so amid a string of kind of gloomy economic news that we've been delving into, if there's any good news, we will certainly do take caution in trying to interpret it, and do, of course, take it with a huge grain of salt, because we've had these kind of rosy outlooks before, but they haven't really played out the way or played out as hoped. Now, a survey by the Korea International Trade Association shows that Korea's exports will expand in Q3 from the preceding quarter for the first time in 1.5 years, and it was conducted on 2,000 domestic exporters between May 22nd and June 7th. It showed the Export Business Survey Index for the July-September period rose to 108.7 from 90.9 a quarter earlier. Now, the EBSI is basically an indicator of firms' outlooks for export activity in the coming quarter. So it's kind of a business sentiment indicator, but for exports. It was the first time since the first quarter of 2022 that the index rose above its 100 mark. That indicates an expansion from the previous quarter. If you look at these surveys and these business sentiment indexes, basically the 100 mark is kind of the guideline. Anything below it is a kind of pessimistic view. Anything over it is optimistic. Kita also predicted that the export environment for 10 items, including ships, chemical products, and semiconductors, among 15 major export items, would improve. And actually, we can already see things starting to pick up as well. If you look at the latest data, Korea's exports rose just over 5% on year in the first 20 days of this month due to a greater number of working days, yes, but although chip exports have remained a bit sluggish still, and exporters say external demand would improve next year, but they're still a bit weary. They say that raw material prices would continue to drag. So there is still that inflationary pressure that could threaten exports. But when it comes to a lot of these major export items, it certainly looks by the sentiment survey anyway that things might start to pick up. But of course, this is just a hope. It is a sentiment survey and a prediction. So we'll have to see in the next couple of months if they actually play true.
All right, let's move on to our final keyword of the day.
Responsible attitude.
So senior U.S. diplomat says that Washington remains hopeful that China will adopt a responsible attitude on cooperation over North Korea and keeping the Korean Peninsula safe. So tell us more.
Yeah, so those comments were made by Daniel Crittenbrink, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, who was in Seoul to make the comments. Now, this came 2 days after Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Chinese President Xi Jinping, and they agreed in that meeting to stabilize their relations. In terms of Korea's perspective, they're kind of hoping that the US can pressure China to kind of rein in North Korea as well. Now, Crittenbrink briefed Seoul officials on that Xi-Blinken meeting. Now, asked whether China will use its influence on North Korea after Blinken's visit to Beijing, Crittenbrink replied that North Korea was one of the important issues that was discussed when Blinken was in Beijing. He said that Blinken made very clear that the US believes Beijing both has the capability and responsibility to use its influence with North Korea to encourage the regime to return to the negotiating table and to encourage North Korea to cease its provocative acts. Now, he also touted the alliance between Seoul and Washington, which he said was stronger than ever. And he also emphasized that the US will maintain high-level channels of communication with Beijing to avoid the possibility of conflicts caused by misunderstanding, something that Blinken said as well. So expressing similar sentiment there.
Thank you very much, Adam, for today's coverage. Have a safe day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
You're very welcome. Stay safe. See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.